Good evening. Welcome, everybody. We're here this evening for a post-reading discussion following our live reading of A Midsummer Night's Dream in a verse translation by Jeff Whitty. And we're delighted to have a couple of guests here joining us tonight, in addition to the cast and members of the crew of the reading. We'll have Mr. Whitty here joining us, along with Louis Douthit, the executive director of the Play On Shakespeare Theater Company, who, together with the Hits Foundation, supported tonight's reading. We're very grateful to them for that. And it's a little later than a typical Zoom session for some of us, although it's fun and delightful to be holding a talkback session and here, even when we're out of our theaters. There's just a teeny little bit of light left in the sky here in South Bend, Indiana at this hour. We've got members of our company on both coasts. And so it's bright for some and dark for others. And so we're delighted to have you joining us as well. I'm going to go ahead and invite everybody just to come on back while I introduce our two guests real quickly. Mr. Whitty, Jeff Whitty not only won the Tony Award for a little musical of which you may have heard, known as Avenue Q. He was also nominated for an Academy Award in 2018 for a film called Can You Forgive Me? And we're going to ask Jeff a little bit about what he's working on now. But go on ahead, folks, and open your cameras and join us here in the Q&A. There we go. That's great. Excellent. Excellent. And part of the fun for this, for the folks at home too, is the chance for the group of us to get a chance just to talk about the play, both in terms of the conversation that takes place between Whitty and Shakespeare. And I may have to say that again at some point in this evening's proceedings, because of course the pun makes me very, very happy. But also just what your personal experience has been with this play, each of you, and what it was like tonight. I've got additional questions to lead into, and I felt like I couldn't jump in and begin without acknowledging the day. It's 57 years to the day since the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom with the speech of Martin Luther King. And we're in a very similar feeling or sounding moment. I wasn't there. Not too many years in between my arrival and that march, but I'll come back to that when I get into Jeff Whitty. But I just wanted to honor that moment there and honor the speech that Dr. King gave on that day. This is August 28th when we record this session, and it'll be up for a few days following the reading on our both on our website and accessible through to our YouTube channel. So then I also want to introduce Louis Douthit. Louis has been a friend of mine for a very many number of years through the Shakespeare Theater Association, and Louis spent 25 years at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, where she was the director of literary development and dramaturgy and served as the production dramaturg for more than 50 productions, a whole host of commissions through the Play On Festival there, and now into its new life as part of Play On Shakespeare. Louis, I'm really, really grateful that you were able to join us for this chat this evening. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting Jeffrey and me to join the fun. We really appreciate the invitation.
Yeah. I thought I might start with you, Louis, in maybe giving us a little history of the translation itself. Of course, I think many of our viewers will know that it was part of the Oregon Shakespeare Festival and your program there, but I don't know that they know as much of what happened beyond that, either outside of OSF or what the readings and or performances were like there in Ashland. And I thought you might be able to give us a little bit of that.
Well, let me try to do that quickly, just because I'd love to talk about the play and get Jeff involved and audiences too. But just to say that in 2015, we had made this announcement that we had commissioned 36 writers to translate Shakespeare into contemporary modern English. And it was always just kind of like an exercise, an assignment. So the assignment for Jeff and the other 35 writers was to do 2 drafts of this kind of line by line. Sometimes it's word for word, sometimes it's thought by thought, sometimes it's like don't touch it, kind of exploration. And there was a dramaturg attached to each of those translations as well. And when they were close to getting completed, and they had a time, like a 3-year time frame, they had to do it in 3 years. It was to end December 31st, 2018. and I was having a lot of fun. So I figured, well, I need to extend this somehow. So I came up with this idea about a festival. And so we read all 39 of them last summer at Classic Stage in New York, and that proved to be really fun. And the Hits Foundation was game to extend our fun. And so in 2009, last year, we pulled away from OSF, became our own company. And basically, we're kind of like promoting the project hither and yon, and very happy to land in South Bend this weekend.
Awesome. Awesome. I didn't know if it hasn't had a physical production yet.
Oh yeah, there's been
Or has it?
oh, I got to get these statistics down. It's something like 15 productions of 11 plays.
I'm sorry, I lost you there. Could you repeat that?
It's 13 productions of 11 plays, something like that. Yeah, Macbeth has been performed twice, and I think, well, Twelfth Night is about to be done its second time too. So I think it's something like that. Yeah.
Nice. And Midsummer? Not yet, or yes? I don't know.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Midsummer was produced. Remember last summer, Jeffrey, right after our festival, the Chautauqua Theater Company, upstate New York, did a touring. I think it was a touring version, and some of it was in a bar, which I kind of thought was kind of great, and sort of goes with that ukulele music at the beginning. I was like, well, I'd like to be at that production. So no, I don't think either of us saw it, though. You didn't see it, did you, Jeffrey? I don't think you saw it either. Yeah, we couldn't get out there, but my friend Andrew Barber said it was very well received. So I was like, well, that's good. That's the whole idea, right?
Nice. Jeff, thank you very much for joining us. I think you are writing primarily for television now and film. Is that true? You're also still writing for the theater and acting, or can you give us just a little snapshot of what you're writing on now? And I promise we will indeed circle back to the play. And so I
of course.
The folks joining us here also have a bunch of great questions for the play as well.
Yes, for me, I see myself just as a storyteller primarily. So the medium's almost secondary. So yes, the last production I did was my version of Head Over Heels, which was quite different than the Broadway version, and Ashland, which was, based on a book from 1580 by Sir Philip Sidney. And I had never written in meter before. And so the first few drafts, I would have like a few speeches in iambic pentameter. And then, I had to turn in the production draft, and it was way too long, 3 days ahead of time. So I set the entire show in iambic pentameter in 3 days. Do you remember that, Louie?
Oh yeah, I do.
I was just like this wreck of a man at the end, just like, but it, what writing in meter does is it condenses and compresses the ideas, the language, everything. Everything has to be considered. And then it became, and then it got to be as a reasonable running time with more cuts to come. But so yes, and then I've been in West Hollywood for 8 years now, 7, 8 years. And I had my movie come out, which I'd actually written in 2011. And then I have a TV show I'm working on now, and a couple other movies on the stove. So yeah.
Nice. I love how the media tends to portray an award like the Tony or a nomination of the Academy in first terms. It was his first Broadway musical and his first film. And of course, meanwhile, you've been doing this and writing this for 25 years as a professional. And of course, it makes it seem like you just kind of dashed it off and won the Tony.
No, it is funny. I mean, Avenue Q was the first musical I wrote, and Can You Ever Forgive Me was the first movie I had produced. So I'm joking that I'm just going to keep doing one thing in every medium. So after the TV show, then I'll do my hip hop album, and then just
we got a podcast idea we got to talk about. There's some interest in podcasts for your translation. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You brought up Avenue Q, and I can't let that one go by without pointing out a particular song in there about which I'm sure you have been asked this summer already before tonight, and that's Everybody's a Little Bit Racist. One looks back and is tempted to ask, gosh, how were you so prescient? But of course, it was current and still is current. And so I wonder if that song has come back as as you watched the events of this summer, or if folks have been talking about that song, just throughout the turbulent summer that we've had.
I think the song right now, I think, there's a time to, I have this theory that you can get rid of pain through one of two ways, through tears or through laughter. It's the same release, the same physical release. I think right now we're in the tears phase. I think everyone's a little bit racist. The time for laughing, I don't know, is perhaps, it's not now, it's not the time, but for me, the song from the score is called For Now. And it's a song, everything in life is only for now. That's what I'm clinging to these days, just to, is with the news and everything being what it is.
I just remember a puppet or two having a significant realization of, oh, I am a little bit racist. and that, I think, maybe that's a harbinger of good things, on down toward the horizon, but potentially of progress. But I couldn't hear Avenue Q and not at least bring that up today, especially.
There are a lot of things in the show that I would want to change 20 years on, but for some reason that song I wouldn't want to touch too much. But sometimes you need a puppet to say things that you can't.
That's right. And I remember profane puppets was a big thing. I remember that being also a kind of controversial, but anyway.
No, there's the secret of Avenue Q is there's only 13 swear words in 2 hours and 15 minutes. It's just about where we placed them. So everyone assumes that it's like The Sopranos or something, but we kept it pretty clean.
Nice. I remember we in a rehearsal the other night, Louis describing you as if you were walking in 10 beats around Ashland as you did Head Over Heels, and then moved into the verse of William Shakespeare. That's also my segue into A Midsummer Night's Dream tonight. And so I would love to open it up to our members of our acting company, and just ask you real quickly, if you wouldn't mind. It says so on each of your names there, but I'm not always sure that the name title from our Zoom conversation makes its way over to YouTube. So would you mind just going around and just one at a time, popcorn style, please feel free. Would you introduce ourselves and let us know who you played tonight? Anybody can go first.
Hi, I'm Namuna Sise, she, her, hers, and I played Helena.
Thank you, and please do include your pronouns. And mine are he, him, and please do to include those. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jordan Taylor, pronouns she, her, hers, and I read for the role of Hermia.
Jump in there, Jacob. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jacob Chan, he, him, his, and I read for Lysander.
Hi, I'm Sarah Scanlon. I use she, her pronouns, and I played Puck and Philostrate.
Great. And those of you watching at home live can also post questions in our chat as we begin. Oh, he's there, right there. He's right next to my screen too.
He's in the middle of my screen.
Give me Cameron.
Dude, Cameron, Theseus, Oberon, he, him, his.
I assume everybody knows you already. All right. My apologies. Did I miss anybody else? Okay, great. And now I'm totally derailed. Great. So as we also ask questions of Jeff and of Louis during the conversation, please feel free to join us and pose yours into the chat window. We'll be watching that and try to feed in as many as time permits. And I wanted to open it to our artists and or from Jeff and from Louis to them as well. What did you notice out of the reading tonight in particular? And I asked you to think about prior productions that in which you have appeared or seen, and the ways that that Shakespeare's version and Whitty's version are in conversation. That's one of the things that I loved about tonight is that the new version and Shakespeare's, to me, are always in conversation with one another. And I wondered how that experience went for each of you. So feel free to use that as a softball prompt, or if you have another question you'd like to ask, also great.
I mean, I guess I had a question for the actors. Have any of you done the show before and then done this? And if so, what was that experience like? Anyone?
Yeah, this reading makes number 17 for me. Yeah. And what was great, it was two things. One was like, I didn't realize how many of Shakespeare's lines were so locked in that I had to go back and go, oh, I need to pay more attention, it's a nice reminder to actually like be present. That 101 acting thing that never goes away. But what I liked was the ease of the writing in here, because it really made it connected dots that I think I take for granted, having done this play and having done Shakespeare for a long time and now teaching it. I take for granted things that I shouldn't, and so it allowed me to go back and go, oh, I'm making a very different argument now, which I really appreciate it. There were some things that I think over the years, the farther we get away from Shakespeare, some things that we make too precious. And I really appreciate it in your translation. A nice ease of argument. I was like, oh, that was the perfect way to say that. Like, it was really, really nice to do that. And it still maintained the poetry, and it still maintained the spirit of it. So I really had a fun time.
We're very close. I'm at 16 productions. So Cameron has the record, I think, in the company.
I don't want to get to 20, but what are we gonna do?
Cameron, did you play a different part in every production? Have you played every role?
I've played everything except Hermia and Bottom.
All right, you'll be my Hermia next.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, bring it. Yeah.
That was
6 foot.
amazing.
6
I
foot.
like that idea.
Yeah.
Though he be but little, he is fierce.
Yeah.
Metaphor, Grant, totally metaphor. Get back to it.
Sorry. And Cameron and I worked with the same roles that he's played tonight 15 years ago in Richmond, Virginia as well. So that was great fun to see him mature as an artist and remember some of the cadence and some of the performance in my head 15 years on. So thank you for that. That was really fascinating.
Thank you.
Anybody else been in it before, in resonances back and forth between the two?
I did a for Louis the other night because in third grade, I don't know, I think my parents are watching, so maybe they can tell me, but like the third grade version playing Titania, and then we did do it in high school, which I forgot, and I played Starveling, and Puck has always been like a dream role for me. I've always really associated with, really felt a kinship with Puck and all of Shakespeare's sort of magical characters. But the mechanicals are like where it's at for me, for any adaptation really. And for this one especially, something I really appreciated watching again tonight was how well the dynamic of the mechanicals, just how quick that language was, how well it worked in this medium. Because this medium is not, it's new for all of us. And so I'm thinking about like, what didn't work about, and I think that the play at the end, especially watching the people watch the play, watching themselves. And we had some really fun time yesterday in the chat as actors also watching and sending each other, or sending the group notes and things. So I think, but for this medium especially, I really appreciated the voice that the mechanicals had. Just how simple and clear, and still kept that delicious languagey stuff, but also didn't flower it up too much.
Yeah, I tried to, especially with the mechanicals, so much of it is probably as funny now as it was then. I mean, I Can Gleek Upon Occasion is probably equally funny now, you know? So, yeah.
But you remember what you said to me about the mechanicals when you were first working on it?
What?
You said, Louis, that's comic gold. I'm not touching that.
There's a
And
little
truth be
plausible.
told, if I were to show you a side by side, which I've been working on all day, which is kind of fun in a really, really nerdy way, it is true. Jeff hardly touched those scenes. Now, what's also interesting is that Jeff chose to spend a lot of time in the beginning, and you probably really felt this, Cameron, in sort of setting up, Theseus and the whole argument of like what's really going on. But he spent a lot of time and a lot of dramaturgical capital. How about that? That sounded really like ooh. Letting us really know what the stakes were. And I thought that was really great. And as the play went on, if you know it really well, you'll know that he interacted less and less as the play went on. And that is a usual strategy for many of these translations, just because if you could just tell me what's at stake, just tell me what everybody's going for, just make that really clear. I mean, I'm okay to sacrifice a little bit of poetry right now, because otherwise it's like really murky and muddy and not really clear. And then he just walked right with it. It's really gorgeous, the scheming sort of planning of how to interact with, but very little was touched in those scenes.
That's actually kind of what I wanted to say. I've never actually been in Midsummer. I think I've auditioned for it as many times as Cameron's been in it. But I'm never tall enough for Helena or short enough for Hermia. And so I auditioned for both.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always go in for one and then they're like, can you read for the other one? And then I don't get either. So it's cool. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, Joy. But what I wanted to say was that I've seen Midsummer many times, and I feel like in my brain, like I felt like I really knew Midsummer, like it was very clear to me and I really understood what Midsummer was. But I think actually what I was doing was I was just blocking out the parts that I didn't understand and just like creating my own story about Midsummer. And so what I really appreciate about Jeffrey's translation is the things like Louis talking about, like the beginning with Theseus and Hippolyta, some of the Oberon Titania stuff. I've just
that clarity about what Titania is fighting for is worth the entire translation.
Yes.
Because we all know that actually the world has fallen apart because these two are out of sorts, and everything is topsy-turvy from that moment. And until that is righted, the world will not be righted. Now that seems like a really great drama, that's a story arc, right? But if we don't have the sense of what the depth of that stakes, right? The rest of it's just like a bunch of, beards, anyway,
right. Yeah. And you kind of get like pee breaks every now and then in Midsummer, right? Where you're like, ooh, the lovers, like I have to pay attention. And then you're like, okay, let me like, I don't know, take a sip of water real quick halfway through Titania's speech, or, the mechanicals, but then, oh, here's Theseus. So like, I really appreciate like having the whole story in a way that I've never had it before. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that's great.
We definitely touched on that in rehearsal. It all comes back to the moon, who, pale in her anger,
that's right.
The governess of floods, angered at what is going on the earth, washes all the air with rheumatic diseases. And that certainly felt au courant.
Yes.
Yeah. It's been very different for me returning to the play as a parent. I always thought that the changeling child was just kind of this magical, fairy creature who could shape shift and alter and become different things. And that was the power that Oberon wanted him for. And of course, after becoming a parent, I realized that all children are changeling children. they do it every day. And 1 week to the next, there are these huge changes, and they're in constant change.
Yeah.
And it is both fascinating, wonderful, and also, you know, very difficult for parents who want to preserve those really sweet, you know, earliest years as much as they possibly can. And there's such a push-pull of, you know, is this the right parenting strategy for the child? Is this what's going to help them the most? And you know, Titania and Oberon, mommy and daddy are fighting, and that that aspect of the child as magically transformative has been just hitting me significantly the last couple of years. I have a young child. That was mine. Jordan, what about you? We hear yours.
Me personally, I do not have much experience with Midsummer at all. I've always loved the magic of Midsummer, the mystery, but it just never really came across for me in my experiences thus far, except in, of course, reading it. But besides that, yeah, it's always been sort of one of those Shakespeare plays that I never got to really sink my teeth into. So I think this experience for me was especially exciting because I've just never had the chance to really dive into this text the way I've wanted to before. So yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the production. Jacob, would we touch on you a little bit before I get to the actual read and semi-production that you guys mounted with it, Jacob?
I was in Midsummer. It was the first Shakespeare I'd done. I was Demetrius. So through that whole thing, there's several lines in there that are kind of iffy, but one that really stands out. And from the audience, someone's was like, I don't know what that means, but I know that was bad. And I was like anxious about what was going to happen here. And I'm glad it was like shifted or just kind of diverted into something not so like the skin on the back, like, you know, your hackles are rising because of it. So it's really exciting to just see those changes and have it.
I'm sorry. I wanted you to finish. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh yeah. I was just saying it was exciting to have that, like, to know that is changed without it being completely doesn't hurt the story at all.
Did I hear you correctly that you said that someone in the audience said that out loud? I don't know what that was, but I knew it was bad.
Yeah.
And I love that kind of audible audience response so much. I think we all, you know, unless it's particularly disruptive, I think we all do.
I think if Shakespeare heard that, he might change that line. I'm just saying. Yeah.
Neat.
That's not his goal.
I do want to talk about the text a little bit, but I have a couple of, you know, now that folks have seen the reading, we can talk a little bit about, you know, some of the inventions that we came up with, and mostly because I'm really, really curious about the flower pass between Puck and Oberon, several hundred miles apart, of course, magically, you know, Jedi mind pass of the flower between you, which they just did, you know, on the first night of the first and only night of rehearsal. Puck handed it off and kind of went, yep, there it is. And we all just went, ah. So then, of course, now we can spoil it just a little bit. Cameron's not going to say a thing. So I'll ask Sarah, did you guys have a chance to plan that? Did you guys do a little, you know, texting back, hey, I've got this flower, we can hand it off? Or did you both just happen to know you were going to need a flower? And it just happened?
All Sarah.
All Sarah.
All Sarah.
Oh, I thought we were gonna lie and say it was no, okay. Because thanks. No, no, I just so I'm not on TikTok because I don't know how TikTok works, but you see these things on TikTok where you'll have like a person and you'll throw a punch and the person, you know, receiving the punch you'll see, and it's this, you know, it's like this video storytelling. So I was like, man, like wouldn't it be cool if I could pass Oberon a flower? And so I emailed Cameron and was like, hey, do you have any flowers at your house? And he was like, send me a picture of like what were like 3 fake flowers that you had in your house. And I said, oh, I have all these wildflowers around where I live. And he's like, I have this purple rose. I was like, oh, okay. So I have a clown character that wears all purple argyle. And so I happen to have also fake purple flowers in my house. So we just said, all right, well, I'll pass you the flower and you'll take the flower. And so, but I mean, when you have 4 hours of rehearsal, like what was the direction that we were given? Like not robust story choices. What was the
Vibrant.
Don't remember. Be bold. I was paraphrasing.
Yeah, it was a really good word about like the about just like the kind of choices to make. And so any opportunity again to like add some magic, I think, especially in this medium of that sort of like surprise and delight. There's things you can do in this medium that you can't do on stage, like you can disappear instantly, so that worked really well for the magical characters. But I think any opportunities for yes, Jacob, propertunities. Done. Check.
Opportunities. I remember the word. That was great. I'm just making a note for a later question. Forgive me. Nice. Louis, you had the idea and shared it with us, which we gleefully stole, which was the mouthing of offstage voices for Lysander and Demetrius when they're away, and Puck mimics the sound of their voice, drawing them into further trouble, which is an old device, as we say in the theater, and I think even as Theseus says. In fact, I begin to wonder just how old that device is. Peter Pan does it in the cave, after all, and mimics Hook's voice. But do you remember from whom that came, or the origin of that idea?
It was definitely not mine, and it came from the actress reading Puck in the first read that we did in early June. And I'm sorry to say that her name is not coming to mind. I can see her, Kim Wong.
Yes,
marvelous actress in New York. Yeah. And I'll say that she came up with the idea. Is that right, Namuna? It's Kim Wong, right? Yeah. She came up with the idea during the reading, and the actor playing Demetrius got the text note, and the actor playing Lysander did not. So it was a little sloppy and we were doing first reads. I mean, there was no rehearsal. This was everybody show up at noon. We're going to chit chat a little bit, and then boom, we're going. And it was live, like the first day of rehearsal, the raw reading that you all would do first day of rehearsal. That was the idea of this, right? So it was a little sloppy, but we loved it. I mean, like everybody was just dying of laughter about the whole thing. I mean, so it technically didn't work, but we thought it was a good idea. So Taylor Bailey, the associate creative director of Play on Shakespeare, mentioned it to Lavina, who had seen that first read that we had done. I thought it was fantastic. So I'm glad that you all thought it was a great idea.
It's tremendous fun.
I mean, that is something that this medium can do, right, Sarah? I mean, it's it's kind of great that you can take advantage of it like that.
I think I've seen productions where an actor's on a mic backstage.
Yeah, right.
And you kind of always can tell it's a mic, and
Yeah.
But this was great fun. I think most especially because of the sheer and utter glee on Sarah's face as she got to play with these voices as Puck. I think it was one of the great ones.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's just so it's not actually like magic, like you're trying to fool people. I mean, we're doing these corny things right in front of people. I mean, that's part of the delight, I think, is that it's coming, right? And there it is, and it's still hilarious, right? All of these tricks that happen in this particular play. And I have never seen, I don't know, you two, between the two of you, 33 productions, I have never seen the play within the play not work, even in the 5th grade version. I'm just saying, because it is so earnest. that's what's so funny about it, but it's also what's so human, and I think what we all connect to. I mean, he just gets right at that, right? I mean, just beautifully set up.
So much. There are waves of images of actors doing things in my head now, so I'm gonna move through them a little bit. There's another moment very much at the end of this particular production, was a choice from Sarah, that I will ask her to highlight just a little bit, and you can feel free to say I'm gonna keep that one private. But I thought I had a guess for the tip of the hat at the very last moment of the reading. It's the first time we've really seen an actor just kind of stand and walk off camera. There have been, runnings in and runnings out. Nimuna and Nick, and especially coming running into the forest as Helena is just chasing Demetrius incessantly through the forest, which is my favorite entrance in the play, in the production that we just did. But my favorite exit is that final one, and I wondered if you would tell us a little bit about, if you wish, where that idea came from, because so it was moving for me to see the empty chair, the empty space revealed. But it has a backstory, and I don't mean to if you don't want to say it, you don't have to. But
no, I mean, I think part of it is that sort of empty space of again, sort of the direction that we all received was, you're playing make believe in your bedroom. You're in your bedroom playing make believe, and so this sort of like leaving it all, you leave it all on stage, so it's like, first you can't leave it all on stage when you're in your bedroom. So there's so there's literally in your bedroom. So there's one there's that, but that also was a little tiny nod to The Tempest, the exit for The Tempest at Notre Dame in 2016. There was just a freedom, just a freedom of like getting out of this box. Ariel gets to come down off of, out of the sky and walk away. And so with this, Fairy gets to leave the box and go and play.
Release this with your hands. Yeah. A different isolation and a different kind of imprisonment, indeed. For those of you who didn't see the 2016 production of The Tempest, it was hugely well received, and a tremendous audience response. But when Sarah came out for the curtain call, it was thunderous. She spent the entire production on a 24-inch steel bar, 2 inches wide, 2-inch diameter, 15 feet in the air, anchored at 60 feet and cabled from 25 feet. It was a remarkable performance. So cool. That was the flower pass and the walk off. I have one other, which was an Oberon Puck moment, and that I think I'm just going to comment that I really, really loved it. It was in the rehearsal. I don't think it made it into tonight's reading, but as soon as it's clear that Puck has put the love juice on the wrong Athenian lover's eyes, of course, Oberon begins to react, as they gradually learn more and more about the fact that this is the wrong person that we've done this to. And then they, of course, exit. And what I loved was Puck shrunk as far as it was possible to shrink away while still on camera behind that plant. And as you did it, Cameron, I think it just came out of you. And it was the funniest moment I have seen in a Zoom reading. I was desperately glad the mute was on, because it was I was on the floor, and it played at a different moment the following night, as of course many of these do live in the theater. But I wondered if you guys recalled that from the rehearsal and recalled that moment just a little bit. God, it was funny. I thought it was so funny. I thought you had planned it, but I knew it was on the moment. So I wondered if you had a recollection of it and wanted to talk about it at all.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't plan it. What I love about this is that there's so little rehearsal and so much is required to pay attention to your partner and play off of each other. And I love that. And I also love that we don't get seduced by the trap of trying to do the night before. If it's there, it's there. If it's not, it's not. And it's just fun to like come together and go. I've known Sarah for a very long time. We've rarely gotten to work together and rarely gotten to be in the same room, and we're still not. But to get to play off of someone, it's like, oh, it's so exciting, and we just kind of go with it. And I love that. I think in a more expanded actual rehearsal process, we get to kind of pick and choose over the weeks of like, oh, that thing, let's keep that thing. But for this, I like that we weren't obligated to keep anything in particular, mainly because we're also juggling. There's a script on your screen and you got to make your mic stay on, and you're like, there's a lot of stuff to keep in the air. So those little moments come out of like, oh, I just get to look at my partner for a second, which is great. And I love how that changes over the 48 hours we got to work on.
Yeah, there's this really wacky thing of this is the one we did last night is now recorded, and so that's the one now, that's the permanent one, and theater is so impermanent, and you get those magic moments of like, oop, now it's gone, and oop, the audience got that gift, or you got that gift as the audience that night, and the next audience got a different gift, and as Cameron said, sometimes you're like, okay, everyone has to get that gift. We have to rehearse that and make sure everyone gets that gift. But it's just really, it's really, because we're all electronic and we're all trying to juggle connecting with, our camera and also talking to people on the screen. It's like, it's really a relief to just listen in those moments.
Louis, you talked about being able to see actors' faces in this medium and in a way that we can kind of see in the theater, but not fully. And I wondered if any of those moments stood out for you in this reading.
Well, what's also fun is watching. I'm often watching the actor not speaking. I'm often watching the actor who is listening on stage because I don't always know what is being said. And so I need help with somebody telling me how to feel about it. So what I love about the way the Hollywood Squares works here is that I get to see kind of close-ups of everybody. So you as director have not been in the middle, but you're not mediating my view, right? Mm-hmm. So everything is kind of, and we're doing a lot of speaking anyway because it's Shakespeare, so I kind of love I have to focus on this too. But so I love that there were moments, and that moment you were talking about with Cameron just kind of slowly steaming, as the reality, hit, was really delicious. And that's true of a lot of the whole presentation yesterday. I just felt like there's a lot more looking on than I think we tend to think about because we're so used to a mediated experience, that you as a film director, for instance, would have decided which close-up or which angle or whatever it was, right? And there's a little of this here, but it's really kind of raw, and I find it almost a little too intimate. I'm like, you're a little too close to me. Like, I don't sit in the front row to watch you all. I'm like a tennis mom. I'm like in the back, I don't want to be that close, but I want to be live, you know what I mean? So I kind of love all that. And I just want to tag on to something I said last night. Cameron, the reason I don't care for the Oberon to Theseus doubling is because I want to watch Oberon oversee the whole play. And I kind of learned that from Zoom, actually, watching the actor playing Oberon the last time that we did this on Zoom. It was like, that's just so compelling and interesting to me. And the same thing with Titania. I wanted them to demonstrate viscerally that they have power over the whole world and that they're there all the time. And that would also be true of Puck, who has that kind of extension as well, right? So that's what I kind of loved, was sort of that, so that as Oberon, you'd be on stage a lot more than, the scenes that you're technically reading. So that's why I like that. But I've learned more about how to, not necessarily stage or but put people in groups and stuff, but the power of you all listening, and Cameron's great point about sort of being present about what's going on and sort of helping me too, that is great information at any time, but it's really great information in a Shakespeare play, because sometimes we just need help, like, just tell me, was that a good thing or was that a bad thing? Because I'm not sure I really know. Right, Jacob? I'm like, I'm with you. It's like, So.
Nice. let me open it up to you all. I asked a lot of questions and did a lot of comments. I want to make sure that I'm providing opportunities for you guys to chat about what you just did and ask questions of Jeff and of Louis. I have more if you don't, but I also want to make sure I shut up.
I'm just wondering, for Jeff, what was the most challenging or most fun translation that you were like gleeful about?
In the show, I mean, in the God, I mean, there's one. It's actually, for me, it's still an unsolved puzzle, where he's talking about the gaudy bauble that is later revealed as not worth something. I've tried like 3 different versions of that line. In mine, it's to discover later on that it's paste or something like that. I mean, for me, I guess I look to what the puzzles are that remain to be solved. And so, yeah, that's one that I chew on. There's also the joke at the beginning that's not right yet for me, about the, like a stepdam to a dowager. It's a really, really funny idea. It's the first joke in the show. And what he's saying is really, really barbaric, waiting for the old biddy to die so I can collect, but it has to be put just perfectly. And it is the first laugh of the show. It is the laugh that establishes every laugh that follows. And yeah, so for me, I guess that's another puzzle. Hopefully I'll find it, but I really would love to land with the idea and the language, a nice big clean laugh from the audience. Because right now it's a developing one, they have to think. And so yeah, I guess, you know, for me, a lot of the fun was also working on a line and going, why am I rewriting this? It makes sense. Because you get sort of in this heavy revision mode, and then you're like, oh, wait a minute. Even I just did a little revisal through the play the other day, and I did that a couple times. I was looking at these sort of lines that didn't, to me as the first time listening audience, it wasn't clear. And then I went back and looked at the Shakespeare and went, oh, that's actually perfectly fine. So yeah, I guess for me, what brings me joy is solving the puzzles and problems.
Thank you.
Yeah. That she just became an aunt in my head, and I'm always listening for repetition and recurrence of you know, thematically or linguistically, and I think of the wise old aunt telling the saddest tale that Puck gives us, and then Lysander's aunt, 7 leagues, 20 miles, you know, in your version, 20 miles from Athens, and this particular one, that they seem to, if they're not related in any kind of theme, they rhyme in this play. And that hadn't dawned on me until listening to it earlier tonight. Yeah, Jordan.
I had a question for you, Jeffrey. I was just thinking about, as far as writing, your writing process, when you hit certain blocks or there's just, you know, a lack of inspiration, or there's a section that really just is hard to tackle, how do you go about that? How do you find that creative spark again, or that inspiration, if there's any unique process for you in that?
Oh, it's funny. I'm thinking of, in the thick of the rhyming couplets, going, oh my God. It's the kind of thing where you're looking at how many more rhyming couplets there are, because those were the hardest, because I wanted to match him rhyming couplet for rhyming couplet. But then to do a rhyming couplet with the same meaning of, you know, those were absolutely agonizing. And so I guess those were where I would lose all hope of ever completing the task. And so I think I might have even taken a video of me at like 3 a.m, just looking like hell, going, I hate this. But just soldiering through the damn thing. Because once you have the first one done, I guess that's my advice, is bring yourself as much joy as you can. And when it's not there, muddle through. But when you have the first thing done, that for me is when the fun really starts. because then you can craft and revise for the audience's experience. And always, always put yourself in the audience's seat, not a judgmental audience, but we all know audiences. Audiences want to be told a great story. So put yourself in their seat and imagine yourself listening to it for the first time, and have as much fun in your head as they will, really, really write. Always think of the audience. And as we know, the audience is our friend. In certain areas of the commercial theater, they treat the audience as idiots, as rubes. And we all know that that's not true. And having seen Avenue Q in 7 languages around the world, and going and chuckling to myself every time, it's the same. The audience laughs at the same stuff in every translation. Audiences are the same everywhere. So I guess, when you're writing, you're the host of a party. It's the fun of hosting a party. You're planning a big night out. So take that, the generosity of storytelling, and then the humility of putting yourself in the audience's place. And I think that thing of almost like you're playing a trick on the audience, but the rascally, wonderful kind of trick, not the villainous kind, but you want to throw them surprises all the time. And that for me is what I love about storytelling is yes, you're the host at a party. So when you're not feeling inspired, put yourself in the audience's space and go through and take pleasure in what you've done. And then when you hit that sticking point, go, okay, what do I as the audience least expect? Throw them those surprises throughout.
If you saw the Lin-Manuel Miranda interview with Stephen Sondheim, Jeff, a couple of years ago, Sondheim had been to see
Hamilton?
Play, but he went and saw a play, and he said there was just several unspeakably horrible things in this tragedy. There was an evisceration, and somebody else was murdered another way. There was something horrible involving a child. It would really be typically his kind of thing in a dramatic sense. Why am I bored? And his theater going partner was I knew I was gonna Amadeus, help me.
Tom Hulse?
No, the playwright.
Tony Sheffer?
Peter
Schaefer, yep,
Yeah.
it's Schaefer, that's right. Leaned over and said, "There's no surprise." And
Yes.
Sondheim said, "Put that over your, over your bedroom mirror." Not writing for just the sake of surprising an audience, but identifying that new thing that is revelatory, that is surprising.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's also true with characters too. I mean, and obviously Jeff will do that. I mean, certainly in the works that I know of Jeff's, but it's true in character. You got to find what that surprise is. I was talking to somebody last week, an actor reading Prospero, and I said, aren't there no surprises for that character? There has to be. And I said, well, to me, it's when Ariel turns the tables, and it's that beautiful surprise moment, right?
Mm.
But we know these plays so well that sometimes we don't come in with sort of beginner's mind, and we don't think that there's going to be a surprise. But I'm telling you, man, Shakespeare is not Shakespeare, but not knowing to craft surprise, and it's set up, and that's why it works. And we could dig through and show you where it happens, and Jeff is going to work like crazy to make that first joke work. And I guarantee that's what Shakespeare would do too, to make that, because that's the key to unlock this whole play. And it's a technical, and it's a puzzle, but it's vital, sort of like the geography of where it is in the play. It's vital that Jeff, I know you will keep working on it until you get that rhythm right, because it's a rhythm thing, right? But we have to have surprises. Otherwise, what do you need me for? If you have the answer to everything as the characters in the play, what do you need me for? You don't. I'm not going to help you answer anything or support you and cheer you along as you make the right choice eventually, right? So I think that was a fantastic answer, Jeff, about being in the audience seat and just like, tell me the story, right? And I want that roller coaster ride too.
That's
So much of it is also me to myself sitting in the audience going, stop showing off. cut to the meat of it, you know?
I have to tell you, there are times that I'm working on a Shakespeare play, rehearsing a Shakespeare play, or sitting and watching a Shakespeare play, and I went, Will, you're being paid 6 pence a line here. Admit it. Admit it. You're getting the money per line. You did more lines for this because you did. I felt like there's a couple where that may have been.
But you know what? There's the literary version, which is in the folio. And if you, this tradition's gone on for 400 years. Just because something's printed doesn't mean it's like set in stone. I hate to be sort of like bust everybody's like illusions here. But, you know, if you look at Tennessee Williams' work, you will see 3 different drafts. And there's one that's very much a literary draft where he just like wrote everything in there just because he could. And then, you know, the director said, hey, then there's the acting version, right? Which one's legitimate? They're both legitimate, right? But which one are we going to end up doing? So I think that I think there's a literariness about those plays published in the folio, you know, and we own 18 of them. We have nothing to dispute against, you know, to say that. But I think that there was that balance between what they were literarily and also what they were dramatically.
And for me, a lot of, especially a lot of the versifying going on at the end is not in, even when it goes off iambic pentameter to the 7 syllables, it would then go off. And I fixed it all, not for meaning so much, but because my suspicion is that it was originally perfect. And then in memory and all of that, when it finally got put down, there were little blips and errors. As with throughout the play, there are little blips and errors in the iambic pentameter. I can't help but think that is the game of telephone aspect.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, you're talking about right at the very end when you kind of made it seven beats.
Yes.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I love what you did. I agree. I thought that today too. Yeah.
Going from the Playhouse copy to the Print House copy, errors in the printing. Yeah, the telephone.
Word processing has not actually made this any easier. I'm just here to say it's still painstaking. Yeah, it just hasn't made it any easier.
Let me use the segue of surprise to ask Louis, what's next for Play On, and ask you to give a plug to, you know, upcoming offerings on which you're working, and short term or long.
Thank you. Thank you for asking that. We are, as I said at the beginning, you know, we're promoting these translations, you know, and Jeff's among them. And there are a couple different projects that are happening with most of them. We are getting them all published. Arizona Center for Medieval and Renaissance Studies at ASU is publishing them all, cool, which is awesome. So we should be able to see them beginning next spring. We did get a little behind because of COVID, you know, we're a little behind our time schedule, but the idea is that they'll be very inexpensive paperbacks. I want them accessible to everyone, or want to reduce as many barriers as possible so people have access to them. We are beginning to get a lot more requests for them, which is awesome. And I think I did mention that there's a podcast, there's a company that's reached out to us about doing some tests with a podcast, and we're hoping that Midsummer would be one of those. And there are various and sundry readings coming up. We had those readings in the in the spring. They were very successful, and we've got some more funding to ask, and we've been reaching out to Notre Dame Shakespeare, for instance, to produce a reading. So we're doing more of that in the fall, and there's probably another handful as the fall goes on. And so I've been reaching out to theaters and to schools to get more of them out there in Zoom. You know, what I'm really interested in is twofold. One is that they all get published and produced and shared, but the idea of translation and looking at these texts again and kind of really examining them and slowing us down in kind of a slow food kind of way to really look at them and be present and kind of agree together on what this document is and how then it's going to work together as an ensemble is what I think happened 400 years ago. And so I'm really interested in encouraging everybody to do that kind of process. And whether it results in Notre Dame or anyone else producing Jeff's work, which I strongly urge, also understand that there's great, there are great things that we will learn about these plays, just as we've talked about tonight, that I don't know what happens when you apply it to the Shakespeare, what you've learned now. It'd be very interesting, but these are also incredibly viable. I think you felt that. This is what my sense is from you all as actors, and hopefully as audience, that it was enjoyable and that it was viable and it was Shakespeare. Ian.
Well, we are going to get a chance to bring these discoveries to this play. That's my commitment. Whether we're outside with 6-foot circles spray painted on grass somewhere, or whether we're back indoors happily vaccinated, I'm convinced that our medium will return. And this one too, I think, is going to continue to be a way that we explore the texts and share story with one another. Maybe in development, and maybe even as an art form in and of itself. It's going to be fun to watch that.
Yeah.
Brings us to an hour, and I wanted to really thank you guys, but I want to give a final question for anybody. Didn't want anybody to feel like they didn't get a chance to ask theirs or comment on it a little bit. Great. Thank you once again.
I do want to say one thing,
Sure.
and it's not really a closing thing, but it's to Sarah, because Grant told me about the moment in 2016 with you as in Ariel, and how touched he was by sort of the resonances of that for him. And I just want to say that without even seeing it, I also felt touched by that. And the reason is because twofold. One is Puck is the beginning of Ariel.
Mm-hmm.
And two is because it was a company of actors who were together for a long period of time. And we as audience would have enjoyed watching you in 2016 and watching you tonight, right? And that's the joy of this whole enterprise, really, that he was writing for actors. And I know Jeff loves actors and is an actor himself, and you write for actors. There's no doubt about it, because I think you could feel that sort of energy and sort of love and joy in there, right? And I think that's what Shakespeare was doing too. But what I really love about this experiment of bringing everybody together like this is that we can be an ensemble for a couple of minutes. And I do think that's the spirit of this. I do think there was doubling involved. I do think that was how it worked. But also carrying forward, we do these plays out of order chronologically, right? Just imagine what it would have been like to be alive from 1590 to 1610, and you avoided the plague 3 or 4 times, whatever. I'm just saying, but if you were able to go and see those plays in the chronology that he wrote them, and how that would have carried forward your experience about them, and in body of actor, but also thematically. And there's a lot of a shorthand, I think, in the plays, and we try to bring it to life, but it's in some ways it's an impossible exercise. But I was reminded of that last night when Grant texted that to me, and I just wanted to say that I just thought that was a sort of a beautiful homage, and thank you for sharing that, and to say that is totally in the spirit of theater, I think.
He wrote for these, hallelujah. And he wrote for these actors as they aged and matured.
Exactly. Yeah,
too.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. I mean, come on. Those early plays were a young man, and the older plays are someone who has matured, maybe a little bit.
Well, let us hope for the same as we age. Hope for increasing maturity, right?
Yeah, please give me some wisdom. It's just any day, it's waiting for it.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much. That's the final event of our online offerings this summer for the Notre Dame Shakespeare Festivals. I'm tremendously grateful. We've got a big Shakespeare in Prisons conference coming up in October, which you and our audience are invited to watch and to comment on and to participate. We'll have kind of a core group of folks, but then beyond that, it'll be shared internationally, and folks are able to watch all around the world. So we're excited about that. And of course, the Shakespeare Festival returns next summer. So we're already in the planning stages for it. The titles are these postponed from 20 to 21. We were committed to those titles, and so we still are there. The Two Noble Kinsmen, and of course, A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Well, that makes that easy, doesn't it, Grant?
Yeah, it makes the planning a little easier. Yeah.
And I want to say thank you so much to the cast and everybody that mounted this, did such a beautiful job. It was a joy to watch, and also really, really helpful. So thank you.
Yeah, here.
Great.
Jeff, for writing it.
Thanks, guys. We'll sign off from there. Thanks very much, everybody. Appreciate you being with us tonight.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.